Okay, got it.
Got it.
All right. So, hello. My name is Devin Readers. Today we have Barbara. Pronounce your last name, Barbara. I'm
Le-
sorry.
That's okay. Legere.
Legere on with us today. How are you, Barbara?
I'm doing good. Thanks. How are you, Devin?
Good. Let me shut this down before. Uh, okay, sorry. Little technical difficulty. We're new at this, so I always forget that I have to shut the internet off or it'll echo. So, um, tell us about yourself, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. Um, well, what would you like to know? Just your basics?
Just basics, yeah.
Okay. Well, I I identify myself as a mother who has lost her son. And that is when someone asks me, who are you? That's what I say now. I live in Southern California. I wrote a book about my son, his mental illness, his addiction, and his suicide. And that was published earlier this year. And my life focus is just helping other people understand what it's like for people in those situations and hopefully bringing some comfort to people.
So, have you listened to the podcast Last Day?
No, I haven't.
Do you know what it's about?
No.
Well, it's about, quote, the things that are killing us. And the first season is an in-depth look at opioids.
Oh, wow.
So,
I need to
and
listen to that.
and the woman's brother died of an overdose. Did you watch that show, Parks and Recreation?
Yes.
He was on that and he died of an overdose, and he was a writer and actor on that. So,
Wow. Yes, it's hundreds and thousands of people have died over the last few years, and it's happening even more now.
okay, so tell me about your son's addiction. Like, when did you first notice he was addicted? All that kind of stuff.
I first noticed his depression when he was in third grade. And that was very difficult because I didn't know what to do for such a young child. I didn't want to put him on medication, but I did. I decided to try it myself first, and it helped me because I'd been depressed. So as time went along, he got better and he seemed fine. But then when he was around 15, he started drinking and smoking weed, which led him to meet some people that did heroin. And he started using heroin and became very addicted to it. And later he added meth to the mix. He actually told me himself when he was 17 that he had a drug problem and asked for help.
Well, that was very big of him. Um,
Yeah.
how did you go about getting help? Like, what kind of resources were there? All that.
Uh, Resources are, it's not easy for anyone who wants help to just get it unless you have really good insurance, like a PPO plan. We
For
did,
people who don't know what PPOs are,
oh,
please
it's the
explain.
provider, what does it stand for?
Provider preferred option.
Yes, that's what it stands for. So it's like an insurance plan that your company pays for if you have a job, or, you could pay for it yourself, but we didn't have that. So he did go to treatment probably 13 times over the years,
Wow.
which goes to show. I remember the first time he was in treatment, I sat there thinking, why are all these people saying this is my second time or my fourth time here or whatever? I thought, I was so naive. I thought, oh, he'll go once and the problem will be over and we can move on. But it doesn't work like that for everyone. For some people, it does, but most people, it takes, quite a few tries. And some people, like my son, don't make it at all. So
Now, did he ever do medication assisted treatment, or was that?
absolutely, I am a big believer in that. I know some people don't agree with Suboxone. That's what he used. He also tried methadone at one point, but he did very well on Suboxone until he decided he wanted to get high, and then you can stop using it for a few days and you can get high again. But I think it's helped so many people, and I definitely think it's a good thing.
So I'm mixed on medication treatment for that kind of stuff. I mean, not that I've ever had an addiction, but just from somebody who's been affected by systemic issues, having a disability, and is passionate about systemic issues. I'm mixed because one, I know it helps people, and that lady will say on the podcast I told you about, will say, if my brother had gotten the medication, like he would still be here, and there's no way to know. But
Yeah.
for me, it's like, why would you put medication to help you get off of medication? Like that's what I
Yeah. Well, I think the medication to get off drugs like heroin is definitely the lesser of two evils.
yeah.
And it does take the craving away, and it also blocks it so that if you do slip up and use, you're not going to get high. So you don't bother trying because you know that it's not going to work. Some, it is a medication. It's something you probably don't want to stay on the rest of your life. But I think for people like my son who are just a really severe case, it does help. I've seen it help people. But yeah, we can agree to disagree on that for sure.
Well, I mean, I kind of agree with it in certain cases and kind of, don't in certain cases.
Yeah.
But um how do you know if like the medication assisted treatment is right for people, and how do you know when it's not?
Well, I think you would have to try it for yourself to see if it works for you. I mean, there's several different things that you can try. You can try Suboxone, methadone, Vivitrol. Now they have Suboxone in an injection, which I think is great because
Yeah,
normally
that
it's
is.
strips, you could stop taking the strips, but if it's injected in your body, you can't, take it out. So yeah, I think it's just a matter of trial and error to see if it works for you or not.
Yeah. Um, so like what was like the I guess low point in your like the journey, and the high point too? Was there any funny stuff?
Let's see. Sometimes I had to find humor in some of the trouble he would get himself into because of drugs. But most of it was pretty traumatic. He did spend time in jail and prison because of things that he did because of his drug use. And that was really, really hard on him. I think it affected him very negatively to go to prison. Jail wasn't that bad, but prison was really bad for him. The lowest point was the last few months of his life when he was just so despondent that he lost hope. And he didn't die of an overdose. He actually used a firearm, or I would have always wondered if it was an accident or not. But he had been talking about suicide since he was younger. And I mean, we talked about it constantly. And he told me many times that he was going to do it someday. So that was the lowest point, was the few months before. And then, of course, actually the day that he did it was the worst day of my life, obviously.
Yeah, I bet it. So how did you like go about even like processing that after
Oh,
like
wow. Well, when it first happened, and this is something I've learned recently, is about your response to trauma. My initial response was yelling, screaming, yelling no. I mean, I screamed and yelled so much that I lost my voice for 4 days. But I later learned that that is a natural response, and that is a good response, because I got those initial feelings out of the trauma. But to process it, I mean, it will never go away. I will never stop missing him or grieving him. The loss of a child is just, it's horrific. It's something that's with you all the time. And it's really changed me as a person.
Now, how have support groups helped you with processing?
Support groups have saved me. I lost someone 7 years ago who was like a son to me. I lost him to an overdose. And at that time, I found a support group for parents who had lost children to overdoses. That group, when I lost my son, Kevin, surrounded me with love and support. And I think the most helpful thing is that no one will understand what you're going through unless they've been through it too. People are well-meaning and they say what they think you want to hear to comfort you, but usually it's not that helpful. It could even hurt. Some of the choices they say to try and give you condolences. But yeah, the support group is so important. I just recommend that to any parent who's lost a child. You can find a support group either online or in person. Mine is both.
Yeah, how else did you cope besides support
Well,
groups?
some days I don't cope. I have some days where
Some days I don't either.
yeah, some days I'm not coping so good. I went through a really bad depression a few months ago, leading up to the 2-year anniversary of his death. It was bad, but for the most part, I have just decided to take my pain and what I've learned and try to help other people. And that's what helps me, is reaching out to people that are suffering, reaching out to parents. That's why I wrote my book, was because I wanted to find a way to help and to use Kevin's life in a positive way, because that's what he wanted. He really wanted me to write a book about him. I know that because he told me, and so I did. I mean, it was like I couldn't help it. I didn't really want to write it, but I couldn't not write it. You know what I mean?
So, what are the stigma against addiction and mental illness?
Oh, I think there's a lot of people that still look down on it and see it as a real negative. They judge people. My son was called a lot of names. He was treated differently because of how he looked, because of his addiction, because of his mental illness. I think society is getting better at it because we're talking about it more.
Yes, especially after 2020 and
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
crap show that was 2020.
Yeah, I
And yes,
agree.
so yeah, I think we are talking about it more, but yeah, we've got a long way to go. So,
Yeah, we do. But yeah, it's just a hurdle. It's a hurdle.
so what are your recommendations of support groups and books and things like that?
The best book I've read on grief is called It's Okay. What's called? It's Okay Not to Be Okay. And it's written by Megan Devine, Devine. It's a really great book. She lost her husband, but anyone that's lost someone can relate to what she's saying. That is my favorite book. A book to understand addiction, heroin addiction, is a book called The Weight of Air, which was written by a guy named David Poses, who unfortunately passed away last year. And I don't know how he passed. No one has ever said, but I hope he didn't relapse. I don't know, but he wrote the best book I've ever read on heroin addiction.
And I haven't read this either, full disclosure. So it might be bad, but I don't think it is because their podcasts are so good. Um, Everything is Horrible and Wonderful by Stephanie Riddles Wax, Wachs, is such a good book. Well, seems like such a good book because the podcasts are so good. So I definitely want to read that one too.
Yeah, I will too.
Um,
Sounds good.
so when it comes to addiction, how can it affect depression?
It completely takes over their life.
It does.
For,
It does.
yeah. For example, my son, the first thing he would think of when he woke up in the morning was, how am I going to get the money to get the drugs that I need to get through today? And that involved, he might have to steal, he might have to find a way to get money. But yeah, it changes your whole life. You stop caring about everything else. You lose friends. Your family starts to distrust you, so you start to feel guilty. You don't care about anything that you used to care about. It's all, how can I get my drugs? How can I get high and not get sick from not using? Because if you don't use, then you get, you get dope sick. You get ill from withdrawals.
Yeah. Have you, there was a movie to that effect and a book too about the Oxycontin addiction and the
Dope.
pharmacy that got everybody addicted to Oxy. And I watched like one, maybe two episodes of it because it was a Hulu series, and I was like, I can't watch this anymore.
I watched the
Because,
whole thing. I thought it was really good. I mean,
okay,
it's horrific what happened. That's the true story. But I think it was important
okay.
for people to see.
And if you want, I love documentaries. Like I am a nerd. I want to be in production for a reason. Um, I love documentaries and like real life stories of people. And so, if you ever watch The Pharmacist on Netflix, have you seen that?
I haven't seen that one yet, but I have it
Oh,
on my list.
oh my gosh, that guy is a freaking hero. I won't spoil it, but that guy's a
Okay.
freaking hero. And the Purdue farmer, whatever. They seem like a bunch of idiots.
Yeah.
Maybe they're not. Maybe there's more to the story that we're not seeing, but
I think they were greedy, is what they were in my eyes. They were greedy.
yeah, they were greedy idiots.
Yeah.
Maybe not because maybe there's more to the story, but this is a live podcast after all, so I have to say that. Um, but yeah, maybe, but they seem to me from the angle that I saw it like kind of greedy and kind of selfish. So,
I agree completely.
um, what are your views on harm reduction?
I'm also for harm reduction because I
I am
think,
for harm reduction too.
yeah, I
So,
think it saves lives. I think, like, for my son, he had HIV and Hep C from using dirty needles.
oh my gosh.
Yeah. So if he had been able to get clean needles, he would have used them and not picked up those two things. I'm for that. I'm for, because they had like a needle exchange in the county I live in, but then they shut it down. And you could take your dirty needles and they would give you clean ones. And a lot of people said, well, why are we giving heroin addicts syringes to use? Well, they're going to use anyhow. That's why. So why not give them something that's going to not have them acquire HIV or Hep C or whatever.
Yes.
And then the other harm reduction is Narcan. I think
Yes.
Narcan is
Narcan
it's a
is
miracle drug and it saves lives every day. I still carry it with me just in case I run into somebody that's, you just never know.
have you ever?
Not a stranger, but I've Narcan my son a few times.
Oh gosh, that must have been. yeah. That must have been not fun at all.
No, no.
Um, so wow, that's crazy that you had to Narcan your son. I'm sorry about that. Um, so what can we do as individuals to help with these issues, people with these issues?
That's a good question. And, this is going to sound so simplistic, but I think one thing that we can all do is just to be more kind to one another and to recognize when someone's hurting. Um, it really could make a difference in someone's life. I think for a lot of people that start using drugs, they're using them to numb their feelings, to escape, just to feel good. And if they were able to feel good without the drugs, maybe they wouldn't pick them up in the first place. And I just always advise parents, if you notice anything about your child that seems like they're anxious or depressed, act on it as soon as you can, because they may need help. And untreated mental illness is a huge, huge factor in a
Oh,
lot of
yes, yes.
addiction.
Um,
I've talked to hundreds of addicts, and most of them have said that they had mental illness as well.
from someone who's been depressed, like when I was at the lowest point, like, and I've never touched a drug in my life. I have maybe one alcoholic drink like every other month. Like I'm not, but like I was wanting to go to the ER just so we could get anxiety medication to make me feel better. Like that. That's how bad it was. And so, so yes, I can definitely see on treated illness being a huge factor in it.
Yeah, I think
Um, so on that note, why is tough love harmful and I mean not helpful, and why can it be harmful?
in my opinion, and I know this isn't a popular opinion, I think it's becoming more popular. I interviewed a lot of people for my book that have realized that tough love did not work in their situation. But like I said before, a person who is using drugs is probably an unhappy person, a depressed person, an anxious person, and they need love and support. I wanted my son to be encouraged every day. I wanted him to know that he was a valuable and loved person and that I cared about him. So I did everything I could to help him. I think with tough love, especially when you just completely abandon the person, which some people think that's the best thing to do, so the hit rock bottom, that to me defeats the whole point, because they're already so down on themselves. They need someone to be there for them, not to ignore them or not help them. That's just my opinion on it.
That is my opinion too. I think like if your teenager's like failing school, but like, if your teenager's like addicted to drugs, like there's probably a bigger issue there than
Yeah,
um
yeah.
uh, hold hold on. Our technical difficulties, our mics, my mic switched. So
Okay.
hang on just 1 minute. uh, all right. Okay, it switched back. I don't know what happened there. Anyway, is there anything you would like to add before we go?
Um, let's see. I would just like to say that right now the fentanyl crisis is the
Oh,
worst
yes. Tell us more
that
about the
has
fentanyl
ever happened.
crisis, what that is. Yes.
Oh my gosh, it's horrifying. Drug dealers are putting fentanyl in drugs. They're making pills with it. They're putting it in cocaine, in heroin, even in marijuana, I've heard. And the reason they do it is to make it stronger so people will like it better. But they can't control the amount that they're putting in there. And, two people can
Now,
take,
why can't they control it?
I don't know exactly why, but what I've heard is when they get the chemicals to make it and they mix it all up and then they press it into pills, somehow they can't, you know, determine how much goes in each pill. So your friend could take one of the same batch and be okay, and you could take one and die. And I just talked to a mother the other day whose daughter died. She was 16 and she smoked some marijuana that was laced with fentanyl, and she died from smoking marijuana. They're putting it in everything, and kids that are just experimenting, like I know I did in high school. I experimented with pills and drugs, and they're dying, and it's just a tragedy. It's a tragedy.
So is there any way that you can make sure that it's not laced with
Yes,
fentanyl?
you can. In fact, here in California, they just made it legal to sell fentanyl strips at the pharmacies. So you can buy fentanyl strips to test your drugs before you take them. And I would highly recommend that if anybody's going to be using illegal drugs out there, or drugs that didn't get prescribed specifically to them, that they test it first, because it could be a life or death. And even
Yes.
seasoned
And
drug users die from it too.
I just want to be clear, we are not condoning the use of illegal drugs,
Oh,
but we
God.
are saying
No,
if you
no.
do struggle with drug addiction and are going to use, then
Yes.
please make sure it's not laced with fentanyl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just think it should be scaring everyone from even trying drugs, but apparently it's not at this point.
But
So,
these kids think, oh, it's just weed and like it'll be fine. It's weed. Everybody smokes it and they don't realize. Like,
yeah,
get it from a
yeah.
trusted dispensary and you'll be
At
fine.
that age, we think we're invincible too,
Yeah.
Oh, well, it won't happen to me. I remember doing some crazy life-threatening things because I thought, oh, I'll be fine. I was, but not everybody
I
would have.
mean, I didn't do anything like crazy or life-threatening because I had too many adults around me to do it. But I remember thinking, oh yeah, nothing's gonna happen to me. It's
Yeah,
fine.
I think
No.
that's just part of being a young person.
Um, so is there anything oh, what was the process of writing your book like? I forgot to ask you.
Oh, well, that was very interesting because I love writing, but I didn't know anything about writing a book. So the first thing I did was join a writing group, and we met every day for an hour, and I learned so much from them on how to write well, how to organize a book, how to publish it. And as I wrote the end first because it was so new to me.
Yeah.
I didn't want to lose the feelings that I had at that moment. I could still write it today because I still have those feelings, but I thought I need to catch this. And then I started at the beginning and wrote the rest of the book. But it's not just Kevin's story, it's also about harm reduction, tough love, mental illness, how difficult it is to get treatment. I interview a lot of different people from different walks of life, people that are doctors, nurses, addicts, parents, siblings. So, I'm proud of how it came out. I still can't believe I wrote a book some days. It's like, wow, I wrote a book. Oh, can I show you what it looks like? I have it right.
Yes. For those of you listening to the podcast, she's holding up the book right now. It's very pretty.
It's called Kevin's Choice. And it has a picture of my son on the cover, a couple of pictures of him. But yeah, it was a good process for me. It helped me feel like I was doing something positive, and it helped me get through a lot of my emotions too.
So what are some signs that your loved one or whoever might be addicted? I forgot to ask you that too.
Oh, Well, they're, they always say if their friends change, that could be a sign, not necessarily. If things start missing around your house, and not just money, but items like spoons,
Yeah,
aluminum foil, because they smoke it off aluminum foil. Pens, they take apart the pens to use as a straw to smoke it off the foil. Obviously, if you see any kind of paraphernalia in your house, I mean, I discovered syringes and I just, it was so upsetting to see that because I didn't
ugh.
think he was shooting up, but he was. Um, if they start to not care as much about their hygiene, if their personality changes and they're not as friendly, they don't smile as much, they just seem off. Oh, and black stained fingers, that's another sign that they might be doing heroin. Meth is a little different because that is more of a speed thing. And they might talk more, they just might stay up all night. There's a lot of different signs, but I'd say those are the main ones.
So I forgot what I was gonna ask. Oh, how I've only seen a couple episodes of it, but I'm watching it for the first time now. I haven't watched it in a while, or I need to get back on watching it. How realistic is Breaking Bad?
I didn't watch the whole thing, so I can't answer that question. I'm one of the few people that didn't watch it. I don't know
See,
if
I
it's
am
because
too,
of
and
the
I'm just starting to
matter.
watch it now, and I'm like, part of me is like, how is this possible? Like, this is a minor spoiler, but how could the wife like not know that he was doing and dealing drugs the whole first season,
Yeah,
basically?
I don't know.
So, um, is there anything else you want to add before we get off here?
No, nothing that comes to mind. I think you've asked some great questions and I've been able to answer them. So I can't think of anything else, but I really appreciate you having me on your podcast.
Thank you. Sorry about the time mix up again.
Oh, no problem. No big deal.
Um, where can people follow you on social media?
I have a website that's my first and last name, Barbara Legere, which is Barbara, LEGERE.com. I'm also on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. And I use my first and last name for all of those. So I'm pretty easy to find.
What do you do on TikTok? Just out of
I
curiosity.
it took my friend months to convince me to go on TikTok, but there's an amazing recovery community on there. People that just
Yes.
show up for each
Joshua
other.
Shea, who we had on last episode, is a porn addict coach,
I
and
listened to that.
he's on TikTok.
I'm
So,
gonna have to check him out. Yeah. But yeah, there's a big community. I talk mostly about grief, and there's a lot of parents out there that are on TikTok that have lost a child. So that's what I talk about. I just share tips and things that have helped me and try to be encouraging.
do you do any of the dance trends?
No, 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 no. I would never do that. Way too introverted for that.
What is your favorite dance trend? Do you have a favorite?
Um, I don't have a favorite. I love all of them. They're all so fun to watch.
Okay, so do you like the animal TikToks?
Yes, I do like those too.
What is your favorite animal TikTok?
Oh gosh. I don't know. I'm not good at thinking on my feet. That's another thing. When you're grieving, something happens to your brain and
Oh God, yes.
you don't have
Something happens to my brain
the
on a normal
memory.
day, so
I have a hard time recalling things really quick. But yeah, I watch those. Mostly I watch people, but yeah, TikTok can be it's a really great place. I thought it was something different, and I had to check it out for myself to see how many people are on there that are professionals and doctors and all kinds of information out there.
I mean, it's bad in some aspects, but it's
Yeah,
really good in others.
yeah.
So,
Just like most things, you got to look
uh,
for the good.
well, thank you for joining us today, Barbara, and we will see you guys next episode. Bye, guys.